the most part, driving games are pretty normal, generally attempting to replicate cars and racing in a broadly authentic way. If you discount this race that is currently taking place on an intangible rainbow. Highly unrealistic. Also, can turtles even drive? Believe it or not though, this isn't nearly as weird as racing video games get. Consider these 7 driving games that, if they were a car, would be a strange rover. You might remember Minit, a quirky adventure game where you only had 60 seconds with which to collect items and achieve objectives before you died and were reset to the start of the game again. It was like Groundhog Day, if Bill Murray had been a small white duck. The recently released Minit Fun Racer applies a similar mechanic to a racing game, and has you dodging obstacles and leaping over jumps on a little delivery scooter. Judging by the states my takeout pizza often arrives in, this is all pretty accurate. The game begins with only 10-second rounds, but by buying upgrades you can complete more of the race each time you play it. It's a unique, if strange, concept, and in a nice gesture, 100% of the profits from the game go to charity. The only problem is the complete absence of colour, and the fact that the entire thing is rendered with fewer pixels than the display on your oven makes it extremely challenging to avoid colliding with things when you're travelling at speed. I'm sad to report the charity that money is being raised for is not buy Mike a new PC to replace the one he just threw out of the window. When we think of realistic driving simulations, we tend to think of R-Factor 2 with its accurate tyre wear calculations, or iRacing with its sophisticated track evolution model. We wouldn't necessarily immediately think of Enviro-Bear 2000 Operation Hibernation. And yet here is a game that requires you to operate realistic steering, an automatic shifter, and 2 pedals. The only difference is that in this particular hardcore driving sim, you have to do all of it using a single crudely drawn bear paw. Your goal as the titular bear is to spend the final few minutes before winter arrives navigating the 3D world and cramming your bare face with fish and berries in order to fatten yourself up for your long hibernation. Before coming to a screeching halt inside your cave in time for your nap. You'll have to watch your back though, because also trying to snaffle all the quality grub are various other bears, each of whom have cars of their own. There must be some very generous leasing deals going on at the local dealership. Alright, we admit this entire scenario is implausible, but who's to say that this isn't an absolutely accurate simulation of a bear driving a car? It's not like anyone who actually tried to cram a bear into a family hatchback would have survived to report their findings. Exactly. Presumably catering to some very specific internet community somewhere, Drive Girls posed the question, what if Optimus Prime was able to squeeze into a miniskirt? This 2017 PlayStation Vita game was technically more of a third-person hack-and-slash combat game than a driving game, but it finds its way onto this list because it's indisputably car-themed. That's because each of the 5 Drive Girls of the title can instantly transform into a thinly disguised off-brand version of a popular sports car. When you weren't thumping robot insects until numbers come out of them, you were zipping around the world as debadged versions of Japanese cars. The character 7, for example, is a Mazda RX-7. And the character Lance here is a Mitsubishi Lancer. Subtlety isn't really this game's strong point, as you've probably already noticed. Still, Drive Girls deftly managed to avoid lawsuits from Transformers owners Hasbro or any of the car manufacturers by only ever appearing on the PlayStation Vita, a console that absolutely no one bought. Very clever when you think about it. Ever since Sega released Outrun, there have been games that celebrate the joy of the open road, the freedom of having a sports car, a ribbon of asphalt stretching into the distance, and preferably an extremely catchy chiptune soundtrack. Man, I wish Outrun was weirder, then I could just play this. Very few games tackle the other, often forgotten element of the car journey though, the tedious bit where you arrive at your destination and have to drive around trying to find a parking space. That's where Multi-Level 4 Car Parking Simulator, a real driving test run racing games comes in. A game with a keyword stuffed title that takes around the same amount of time to say as it does for you to lose interest in playing the game. This mobile game tasked you with cruising around, at least initially, in a car that looked like a Kia hatchback, but that sounded like a monster truck. Driving through checkpoints before expertly parking in the highlighted space. Points and medals are awarded for parking accurately under the time limit, which simulates the pressure of nipping into the last free space at the supermarket before that giant SUV gets in there. Of course, if all this is a little sedate for you, you can always play the developer's follow-up game, Gas Station Car Parking Sim. It's exactly the same, only this time there's the ever-present threat of you colliding with a fuel pump and accidentally causing a massive explosion, killing everyone in the vicinity. Okay, it's more of an implied threat, but still, drama. Here are just some of the things that Lewis Hamilton doesn't have to do in order to be a racing driver. He doesn't have to painstakingly fit the cylinder head to the engine of his car, carefully tightening all of the 7mm bolts by hand. He doesn't have to operate as an unlicensed minicab, ferrying people around rural Finland. He also doesn't have to deliver illegal Finnish moonshine in his Mercedes-AMG Petronas W12 Formula 1 car. Additionally, he doesn't have to worry about dying because he accidentally fell into a septic tank. I mean, unless the facilities in Monaco have really gone downhill. My Summer Car, which is a game set in 1995 in the middle of the Finnish countryside, is ostensibly about winning a rally race. The difference is that it involves every element of the process, from rebuilding and upgrading your battered Datsun 100A, the titular summer car, and earning enough money to buy parts and enter the competition by doing tedious odd jobs. While this is in theory a game about your car though, it's as much a game about maintaining the driver. Your player character has Sims-style comfort bars for everything from hunger, to tiredness, to stress, to, yes, urine. Okay, fair. Even Lewis Hamilton has to worry about that one. Obscure Korean arcade game 96 Flag Rally is unlikely to be one you've heard of. We're not even convinced it was terribly popular in Korea, if we're honest. It's a shame though, because it's weirder than David Blaine. Not David Blaine doing anything, just David Blaine. Your objective is to tear around the city collecting flags and avoiding colliding with the various tanks that are rolling around the place. It's not clear if this is a rally taking place in an active war zone or if the tanks are somehow part of the regulations of the sport, but either way, you don't want to drive into them. Weirder still is the fact that all the scenery has been stolen from strategy games. The city has buildings robbed from SimCity 2000, huts and castles nabbed from Settlers 2, and a higher than average number of coliseums for a city of its size thanks to some art swiped from Caesar 2. Finally, and weirdest of all, when you do crash, you're treated to an image of an anime woman with bloodied hands absolutely raging as the wreckage burns around her. Man, now that is even weirder than David Blaine. Still just David Blaine, he's weird enough. For some people, just the concept of racing a truck is strange enough. After all, why play big rigs over-the-road racing in a slow, cumbersome lorry when you could be playing something like, oh I don't know, Outrun, with a fast, sleek Ferrari? Literally any excuse. But believe us, the core concept of big rigs over the road racing is actually the least bizarre thing about it. Take the fact that leaving the track and rumbling over the dirt has no appreciable effect on your speed. Or the fact that, at the start of your race, your sole opponent never actually moves from the starting line. Or, indeed, that there is absolutely zero collision detection in the entire game, meaning you can plough through obstacles with impunity. Either we're driving a haunted ghost truck, or this is an exceptionally bad game. I think we all know which one it is. If that all sounds fine and normal to you, consider the fact that in forward gear the truck tops out at 80 miles an hour, but in reverse gear it continues to accelerate indefinitely, ripping a hole in the fabric of space-time. Keep the reverse button held down through what looks like a diesel-powered version of the Twilight Zone intro, and you'll ultimately reach a speed of 12.3 undecillion miles per hour. If you're wondering, an undecillion is a 1 followed by 36 zeros. The moment you hit that velocity, which is over 1,000 times the speed of light, you exist simultaneously at every point on Big Rig's game map, activating all the checkpoints at once and immediately winning the race. Alright, I will concede, that is ever so slightly faster than a Ferrari. Thanks for watching this video about the most bafflingly weird driving games. Did we miss your favourite? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like the video, subscribe to Outside Xbox, and hit the little notification bell icon if you enjoyed this. See you next time!